Attention, all you fishes in the sea. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Sam Fish. Today, we'll be wrapping up our conversation from last week with character actor Robert LaSardo. You want to get hooked on this one and keep a keen ear because this is going to be a great continuing conversation. As always, please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
But you brought up Waterworld, and I think it was it was it was something else, man. To be walking around Hollywood, where I lived at the time, wearing a shirt that was given to me by a production that said Waterworld on it. And I remember one of my friends pointing out, saying to me, in not such a kind way, "Aren't you a little embarrassed to be walking around with that shirt on?" But like, no, why'd I be embarrassed? He goes, "Well, that was a industry flop and all this, like, once again, the mathematics of it. The point is that I didn't care, man. I've never cared about the judgments of of people who feel that it's there's some kind of insight into pointing things out like that. I looked at it like this. I said, well, I went to Hawaii. I was on the island of Kona. I got to meet Kevin Costner. He was very nice to me. Kevin Reynolds hired me. I got paid a really decent salary, and I had fun. All this other stuff that you guys are involved with has nothing to do with me, man. Can I go now? I'm just celebrating. I'm not one of these people, like, if I'm in a club riding a motorcycle, and I got a 1% patch on my back, and we took a beating yesterday by a rival club, I'm not going to take my patch off and put on a different color because we got our asses kicked. I'm going to wear my colors, and maybe next fight we'll win. I'm going to stay loyal to the cause because the cause was loyal to me. So I'm not going to talk crap about the people that hired me and gave me an opportunity. I went from Drop Zone to Waterworld, man. So from where I was sitting, a man who needed to make a living to pay his rent and old credit card debt and etc. It was an opportunity to do the thing I was falling in love with, to work with great people, to make money and enjoy it. And anybody that had something to say contrary to that, I was suspicious of. And that's what led me to be kind of isolated in Hollywood over time, when I started to realize that the success that I was, I guess, enjoying did not bring a better class of friend necessarily. It brought a better class of enemy, in the sense that it provoked envy in people. And it can be very lonely in that sense, when all you're simply trying to do is fulfill the work order and your obligation as an artist, because people throughout your life, the positive ones, have reminded you not to lose sight of your goal, to be positive, and to stand up in your life and face life with courage, and embrace your vocation with respect, with humility and dignity. And you look around and you see, I don't know, this kind of like Roman Colosseum kind of barbarism around you, in terms of the psychic collective of artists who are so ravaged by their own insecurities or starving for opportunity that it makes them go mad. And I don't think it was any of their fault. Like, I don't blame people. I'm not angry with people. I feel sad. I've watched generations and generations, because I've been doing this for a little while, come and go, cycling in and out of Hollywood. And I've seen people go crazy. I've seen people succumb to drug addiction. I've seen people die. I've seen people lose their minds. And they run home with their, to, like Dorothy from, but not so much of a glamorous version of the Wizard of Oz. They came to realize what was waiting for them at the end of the end of the yellow brick road was their own death, or insanity. And so I saw a lot of unrealized or achieved dreams, and the breaking of the mental compass in people's psyche, which turned them into this zombified, almost an aggressive, aggressive types that were not very kind in their observations. So you just learn to be very selective in who you spend time with, because you could, based on society's observation of winning, you're making money, you're visible in entertainment, and I guess making a name for yourself, whatever that means. But you're succeeding based on society standards, yet you feel like you're losing. You're winning, right? Based on that diagram. But if you look around at the people around you and the way they're talking to you and how people are dealing with you, you feel as if you're losing because you're not being necessarily complimented. You're being mocked. You're being made fun of. You're being measured. You're being evaluated everywhere you go. So there's a sense like, wow, man, I didn't see that part of this coming, but it didn't faze me because I grew up in a world where there was a lot of psychic and physical attacks, man. So I just chalked it up to, okay, another opportunity for me to like practice psychic martial arts clearly in a realm that, may compliment you with one hand and then disarm you and then go in and then slap you with the other. Just when you just feel like, oh, well, thank you. Pow, you get hit. And so I learned to keep my guard up psychically, not to be paranoid or be mean, but just to be ready in relationship to so many situations, whether it was auditioning, being on movie sets, dealing with agents, dealing with managers, all that, and the business of show. And I realized there was an element of it that was very vicious. And that's where your faith comes in the art form. That's where your faith
Right.
in the creative art, the art itself. You have to let the art envelop you and not get caught up in all the Vanity Fair and the antics of ego tripping that people are enveloped by. You have to overcome it and overcome yourself so you can do the work properly. And when your friend of yours or someone, a colleague of yours says, hey man, I got a job, you don't ask him, well, what is it? How many weeks? How much are they paying you? What kind of role it is? You don't whip out a measuring stick on them. I never did that. People did that with me constantly. Oh, what are you playing, a convict? Oh, what are you going to be? There was always this kind of like negative tone that would come back almost as an insult to negate or de-emphasize the victory. Because I want, any actor knows this. When you go into audition, you're up against countless people for one role, and the anxiety that can produce, man, is mind-bending, right? So we all know this, which more the reason I think to be sensitive to one another, but it's not the case. To that, others I found to be sensitive, I found them to be even more aggressive in that case. But I tried not to do that. It wasn't my inclination to rain on, like Frank Sinatra's song, man. I don't want to rain on anybody's parade or discount something when I know what the odds are. I would simply say, man, congratulations, man. I'm happy for you. Or if they'd come back from a project, I'd say, hey, were they nice to you? Did you have a good time? That's it. And if they want to elaborate on that subject in terms of the mathematics, that's their business. But I didn't ask them how much money. I remember times where I was watching TV shows that I was on with certain people, and an argument would ensue simply because someone asked the question, well, how much did they pay him for that episode? And the other person would say, how dare you to ask a question that's so inappropriate? So a lot of the time I wouldn't even get to watch the premiere of some of my TV shows because I was in the midst of an argument that had nothing to do with me. But those who were with me were arguing over how inappropriate it was to measure my accomplishment based on money, or the platform, that kind of thing. So I saw it wasn't just Hollywood, it was in other areas of life, personal life, that people were looking at entertainment, not just for the sake of entertainment, but measuring the person based on their financials. There's like your financial status suddenly is looked at in relationship to the platform. And then if you make enough money, then I guess you're now suddenly anointed. You're okay. And the same person that's anointing you is also trying to figure out a way to confiscate the achievement. So it's like, you got to laugh, man. I just
Right.
my way right out the door and say, have a nice day. Just get away from all these maniacs, man. And their fiery torches trying to chase me out of town like I'm the Frankenstein monster, man. So it's hysterical, man.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, those are the jokes.
Right.
Yeah, it's like anything else. Talk to guys who've been overseas in combat. I have a lot of friends who've been in Iraq, Afghanistan. They say that's I've seen it tattooed on their bodies. Glory is fleeting, man. There's a reason they write that, because even when you win, there's the gravity shift to reality of what you have to sacrifice for that victory and what you have to endure after the victory or during the victory. There's something else that comes with the blessing, that you have to
Absolutely.
deal with too. And that's why I think it's important to have strength of character And some people that grow up a certain way are well fitted in this industry of show, because I think if you're too sensitive, man, and your skin is too thin, you're going to be like just a fucking, you're like Grim on the track. You're going to be roadkill, man. He's standing up going, can't kill me, can't kill me. But, 10 tons of steel going about 60, 70 miles an hour begs to differ. And that's
Right.
Hollywood, man. Hollywood's coming at you, and you're, boom, and then you get back up again. Boom, you're getting fired at. Boom, you just keep getting up and yell, Valhalla. And you just keep forging forward, man. And as long as you can still walk and talk and fight for your dinner, your paycheck, your moment in the sun, whatever the individual's motivation is, to do the job, or simply the love of the art form itself, whatever it is, you let that drive you, and you keep your blinders on and keep your guard up, and you just do it, just do
I,
it.
I definitely agree. I
Yeah.
could not have said it better. There's one more film I want to ask you about for, I guess, this round of interview, because I've, I have a very long list. This one's a
Yeah,
little.
I'm sorry I'm talking so much, man. I'm
No,
taking up
no,
all
no.
the time.
You are fine. This is what I love about my show, is to let my guests kind of, it's like a conversation. See,
Yeah,
we're talking about your career and stuff, but it's also seeing where the conversation goes. I like
yeah,
to talk to people. Yes, I like to hear stuff about the industry, but really just to talk to a person and see where everything goes. I think is like the fun part.
yeah. I couldn't agree more.
Awesome, awesome. This one's a little more recent, and I guess it's on the subject of great actors, classic actors, and that was the Mule. And I was wondering, what was it like to work with Eastwood, and just your experience on that film.
Surreal is the word that comes to mind.
Yeah.
At first, it was just surreal. I couldn't accept that it was happening. I dare say, I'll speak for some of my colleagues that were in the sequences that we shared with Clint Eastwood, that they also probably were just as shocked that they were hired. Once you get over the shock, then you got to do the job, right?
Right, right,
It's like jumping into a swimming pool. It's like, whoa, but then you start swimming around a little bit,
right, right,
kind of warm up, and you're like, oh, okay. That's how it was with Clint. We're all like in shock. And then once we started, fleshing out the sequence and rehearsing, and things just fell into place. But I'll take you back to the genesis of it. I got a call from a manager that they were interested in me. So I went into my closet, which I wasn't living in Hollywood at the time, LA, Los Angeles. And so I took my little, device, and I recorded the audition that they want, the pages they wanted me to read. And I sent it to them. And Clint Eastwood looked at it and he liked it. And so he gave me some notes, or his people gave me some notes. Do it again, but just reposition the camera. He wanted to see my physical body, how I look, because I did a close up.
hmm
So he wanted to see the same audition, but on a wide angle. And so I did that, sent it to him, and the next thing I know, I got the call. They're going to hire you. They want to hire you. I'm like, wow. And wasn't waiting. It wasn't a situation where so many of my colleagues who I talked to that were in the film who went on the audition and sat in the room or sat in the waiting area with other men waiting to go in, because Clint Eastwood wasn't there. The casting director was there. And I didn't have the benefit, or maybe I did have the benefit of not being in that situation where I had to sit. I was able to be alone and really focus on what they required me to do for the audition. And once I arrived to set and met some of my colleagues that I was going to work with in the scene, we got to know each other, things just fell into place. And I remember after one of the takes, Clint tapped me in the stomach like a quick snap jab, and he said, "Good stuff, kid." And I thought, wow, I think because I was concerned. We were all concerned. Are we living up to the
right.
standard, or what he expects? And he said yes. And I went off book a couple of times in one of the scenes, and I ad libbed. And what was so wonderful working with Clint Eastwood is that he just went with me. He played jazz, man. didn't stop the scene. He actually ad-libbed along with me. And actually, they kept it. The unscripted dialogue, some of the stuff that wasn't even on the page was used in the final cut. And I thought how generous this man, how
Right.
kind that he allowed me to do that and trusted enough. And it worked. And he complimented me, man. So I just felt like, wow, it was just, one of those kind of moments in your life where feel like, I guess maybe the way a mountain climber feels when they reach the peak of Mount Everest. You're like, wow, I'm
Right.
standing
Right.
opposite this man who's not just a man, he's a legacy. I've grown up watching all his films. And so once you get over that, you got to really get in there and do the job. And to be complimented by that man who I saw as a very humble, soft-spoken, respectful man. I remember when we broke for lunch, I saw somebody at the end of the line, and I realized it was Clint Eastwood allowing the crew and all the actors to eat first. And he just stood there, unassuming, with his hat on, his head down. And I looked, I said, is
Wow.
that Clint? Because, a lot of the time when you're on a Hollywood production and the movie stars there, they usually disappear into their trailer or kind of,
Right.
shuffled away by their security guards, and you can't go near them, right? He was so accessible. He sat down with his crew. I know he's worked with them for years, so I got this sense of this family that he had created with his crew and people that work with him on multiple projects. And so it felt very comfortable to be on his set with his people, and they were very nice to me.
That's awesome, and that really just at least for me, and I'm sure a lot of my listeners that are of course huge Clint Eastwood fans, that really kind of just puts like the icing on the cake, you know, to hear, a story about literally a legend, a living legend. And again, my dad, of course, got me into Eastwood stuff, and I saw the Mule in theaters. And I mean, anything Clint Eastwood does, whether he's just
Yeah.
directing and acting in, he's become one of those, celebrity icons, whether it's in acting or just directing. Anything he does, I'm instantly, I will see it in theaters. I will rewatch it. I've been rewatching The Mule on HBO.
Oh,
Uh,
wow. Cool.
and
Cool,
every
cool.
every time it's on, it's a movie I always turn to. Also, his newest one, Cry Macho.
Yeah.
I've also been watching.
Yeah.
He,
He's a force of nature, isn't he, Sam?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. God bless him.
Just to hear, literally a living experience with a legend, and to hear that he's like just everything you kind of hope and want him to be.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
very, very cool.
Yeah. And that one I had the courage to go and to see in the theaters. Unlike that, I actually mustered up the courage and I went to the theaters and watched it.
It's a fantastic film, and again, there's a couple stars in there I'm a big fan of course, Garcia. Uh,
Yeah. Andy something else. I felt like I went up to him and he shook my hand. He says, "Hi, I'm Andy Garcia." I says, "It's an honor to meet you, sir." And he did this thing with his hand on my hand. And then I was getting into the elevator to go to my room, and he was getting the elevator or going past the elevator. And then he said something to me, and I said something, and he put his hand around the side of my head, the way a relative would caress your head who has an affection for you. He said, I'll see you later." I said, "Yes, sir, I will." And I think he appreciated that because I got this military background. So people who I respect are older than me, even some young men, people younger than me, I call them sir when they're working jobs clearly that I know are laborious and maybe tedious. I have to give them respect because I get it.
mhm.
And so I think Andy Garcia appreciated that I was speaking to him almost like he was a commanding officer in the military, because that's how I perceived him.
Right.
And he responded. Sometimes you do that and they respond with arrogance. They're like, "What are you doing?" But he saw me. He actually saw me. I could tell. He felt me. And then he put his hand, and the way he caressed my head felt like is somebody I knew my whole life. He recognized the old school respect and he gave it right back to me, like I was a relative, man, that he cared about. And I never forget that. I will never forget the way he touched me and how I knew he meant it. He wasn't pretending. He really meant it. And it meant a lot to him that I saw him as well. And I gave him that respect. Because there's a lot of young people, I'm sad to say, they're in the movie industry now that are young teeny boppers that may not even know or care about some of these iconic actors who have moved the mountains with their ability. They don't seem to do their research or know about the older films. And
I
so
know.
I really
I
appreciated that.
just talked about this subject
Yeah.
with Peter Dobson in an
Hmm.
interview
Sure.
we
Oh,
did.
Peter. Yeah. Yeah. Peter. I love Peter. Yeah.
Um, and he was
Cool guy.
telling me about he was on a film set, and he said to, I think it was the casting director, "This is very remnant of Dog Day Afternoon." And she said, "What's that?" And there was a job I was working at a few years ago, and I was like the oldest one working there, and it was like right around the time the Blade Runner sequel
Mm.
came out. And for me, Blade Runner, the original, is probably my number one favorite sci-fi movie of all time. And they were basically saying that the fact that it was like, 2.5 hours long, and they went to see it in the theaters, and the kid basically fell asleep, like, before the movie was like halfway over, and it's the
Yeah.
fact that we have, like you said, this new generation that, I mean, and this kid literally said he won't watch anything past, or I mean, before 1980. So it's like you have this new generation that, is growing up in the age of, comic book movies and everything, and doesn't necessarily understand that there's this whole, plethora of film history, and the reason, certain films are the way they are and where the inspiration came from. I mean, German expressionism. I mean, that's why Tim Burton is so good at doing, what he does. And you have all this classic film history, and Pacino is up there, but, like, he has all these awesome movies. De Niro, I mean, I was watching Mean Streets last night, and talk about a classic, film. And if you look at Mean Streets compared to, Taxi Driver, and then Raging Bull, and then up to Goodfellas and Casino, and all that, you can clearly tell it's Scorsese, like, testing the grounds, for, what would, become, his signature style,
Mm.
of directing. And there's just so many good movies out there. And the fact that they come from a time, pre what we're living in now, doesn't mean you shouldn't like diss those movies. That really means you should explore and investigate those movies even more, because a lot of the movies that they're making today, aren't, they're just not classics, and they will not stand the test of time. And I feel like a lot of the movies that I mean, there are movies that we're making now that will stand the test of time, but I think more so we've kind of steered away from, making classic cinema versus, kind of like eye candy in a sense,
Yeah. Agreed. There's a lot of that. Yeah. I think one of my friends, filmmaker friend of mine, calls that the 70%. That's the 70%, he calls it. And then there's the 30% that wants to watch stories that take their time developing the characters and, don't rush through the editorial. They're not quick cuts. They develop the story.
Right.
The pacing is there, but it's not it's not a thrill ride. You have to really pay attention and get involved. It requires that you pay attention. And not everybody wants to do that. People just want the thrill ride. They want to have their minds blown. Like you said, they want the visual aesthetic to masturbate their consciousness to a point where they can get off and, just disappear into the visual stimuli and the sound and all that.
Right.
And so in that sense, that becomes the more important aspect of manipulating audiences and cueing them and training them and programming them on how to watch product. It's almost like a form of brainwashing. It's kind of scary in a way.
I know.
It's a form of fascism.
Right.
It doesn't seem like fascism because you don't have a guy with a mustache screaming in German at you.
Right.
But it's hidden behind something. It's something the avatar, the representative is set in front that looks nothing like that. But the suggestion is that you had better keep up with this. You had better get with the program. You had better keep pace with this. And I think Woody Allen said it in one of his movies. I think it was Annie Hall. He said that the audiences are systematically, they don't even know it's good because his friend was on a successful TV show in Hollywood. And Woody Allen said he was getting nauseous from watching the dailies. And he heard the laugh track that his actor friend was putting in there. He goes, those are fake laughs. He goes, yeah, but my show's a hit. He goes, listen, and he made the comment about that audiences don't even know it's good anymore. They're, systematically having their standards lowered year after year, and I never forgot that comment that he made in his movie about, and this was in the 70s.
Right.
He was recognized.
Right.
I don't think he was just, it was some vicarious throw. I think he was very specific, and it was, a statement he wanted to make that was pointing to the responsibility that needed to be addressed. Where are we going? What are we doing? What are you guys doing? And even Edward Norton, and when he communicated to Michael Keaton's character in Birdman, that genocide that you guys are committing out there in Hollywood, he accused him of being a fraud. They got into that argument about, while you're out there doing, committing that genocide, I'll be here on the stage, doing whatever. And so there's this argument going back and forth, and I thought that was so brilliant in that film, Michael Keaton and Edward Norton, that they, that it was written in such a way to, show
right.
the struggle that we face in that area with, sensationalized entertainment as opposed to substantial spirited entertainment that can challenge the people, inspire them, and maybe they come away more intelligent, not dumbing them down with sound and visuals and masturbating fantasies that they have about escaping to other worlds or killing, violent movies that glorify this video game warfare that seems to bear no consequence when it really does. Ask any combat that'll tell you it doesn't really go down like that, man.
Right.
You don't get shot multiple times and get back up again. It doesn't work like that. So they're I feel at times being very irresponsible with what they're communicating in the violence. Because it's not, it may seem realistic because they've gotten so good with the science of special effects that it seems like it could happen, but it doesn't. It's an illusion. It's not real. It's a magic act. And the problem is young people look at it and they think it does function that way. It does not. The nervous system shuts down when certain things happen to the body. There's certain basic things that happen that their films defy the physics of that reality, but make it seem possible because they're so good at constructing that technical magic act. And it's dangerous, I think, when you get carried away with that. And I don't want to get into anything political. I don't know if the chicken, what came first, the chicken or the egg. I don't know if you can, now suddenly segue into what's happening socially in America or the violence. I don't know if one necessarily speaks to the other. Who knows? There's been violence throughout history, from the Greeks beyond, and violence has been with us. It seemed for as long as man has figured out how to pick up a bone and hit another man over the head for water.
Right.
So who knows? But I'm just saying that you're talking about, you raised the point of people, maybe how I get, what I get from what you're saying is how audiences have become desensitized. And if that's the case, then the producers that create product have to keep upping the stakes. Well, we've blown their minds with this, but we got to find new and improved ways to spike the Kool-Aid or put more concentrated THC in the drug to really, we've blown their minds, but we got to keep blowing their minds and they're getting bored. So we got to figure out a new way to attack
Right,
the same
right.
subject, but really, but increase the dosage, you know? So I don't know if we're creating audience members or addicts.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
it's
don't know what it is.
interesting. I don't like to get too political, like either, especially on my show. I like to
Yeah,
keep, like
I
talk
don't know what the heck is
politics.
going on.
Uh, but it is a very like interesting subject when you think about it. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, it's exactly right, the chicken or the egg. You know,
Uh, I'll just stick to the virtue of the craft. I always go back to
right,
the craft. Well, Robert, why are you doing this? Or why did you make your own film? Because I wanted to see if, in fact, the claims about me are true, not just by others, but to myself. Am I, in fact, an artist? Or am I just getting paid to go mad in front of the camera? You know,
right,
some may would consider that the characters that I portrayed or have been asked to portray by others who've been written for me may not demonstrate a lot of depth. Others would say you take something that has no depth and you give it depth. How do you do that, Robert? Well, I was trained to do that. It all depends on who you talk to, but I think it's still there's a responsibility to the art form itself. Forget about the politics, forget about all the
right,
stuff that we just mentioned. But I think at the end of the day, for me and any I think artist that is honest with themselves is that am I creating art or pornography? What am I doing? And if I'm not satisfied or I don't feel like I'm being true to that, what can I do to change it? What can I do? Can I write something? Can I collaborate with others that feel the same way and make something that speaks to the art form, that does it some justice? It may not necessarily speak to millions of people, but at least is honest in what it communicates,
right,
and entertains at the same time because you have to be able to entertain. You can entertain and be honest and tell a story that I would say Scorsese's. If you mentioned Scorsese, I think he was fascinated. I don't know the man, so I can't speak for him, but I feel my instinct is that he has an affection for a certain culture of this gangster culture. I mean, he's shown himself to be incredibly dynamic. He can do anything, right? And
right,
Mean Streets. You mentioned movies like Mean Street, Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, in this casino. There seems to be an affection for this gangster culture, man. And he, no one better than him, has communicated the brilliance of that and the degradation of that world. And at times taken the glamour away from it. He's presented it to you in a very realistic way, to the point where you can almost romanticize the characters until you can't because he shows you something so horrific. You go, whoa, this is not. There's nothing to celebrate about this. This is disturbing to watch this guy be beat to death, and then
right,
thrown in a grave. It's horrific.
right,
So I think his ability to communicate it honestly is no one has done better in that sense. So my point is, I feel like he may have had an affection early on for a type of storytelling and characters that he grew up with, that he wanted to communicate that truth for that period of time until he graduated into other types of movie making, right? And so I feel that's any artist, they say, well, write about what you know, right? So I think if you have a subject matter, and I'm speaking to the audience that wants to create and is creating, I would suggest, I know I haven't been asked this, but I would suggest stick to what you know and beyond, and in that sense, if you can build off of that platform and bring others that understand that vision and share it with you, then you potentially can embark on a very artistic and entertaining endeavor that may change people's lives at best, or at the very least, entertain them for an hour and a half, because you're coming from a place that's real, you know.
definitely.
I think it's important to come from a place that's real. And I think Scorsese came from a very real place. I think he did his research. He was living the research. I think he grew up in Little Italy. He lived in Little Italy.
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
that world. I grew up in New York City. I remember the mafia Italian mafia was very powerful in those days. I'm sure he rubbed elbows with people, or maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I don't know. But I'm sure he was not afraid to dig deep because it shows in his work. he authenticates it with such realism, man. In that sense, gives you an education about the underworld, and the Italian mafia phenomenon in a way that no one has been able to match, in my opinion. So it's the same thing. So you find a subject matter. Like, look at Woody Allen. He champions the neurosis, right? He makes you laugh over these neurotic quirks and his fascination or fear of death, and he makes it funny. There's a patterning with some of these filmmakers in the way they write things that you feel may be kind of close to home, or they may deny it. Who knows? But I think it's important to start from an honest place, marry it to your creative ability, and bring other people on board that can help accentuate that, so that the experience is authentic. It's not contrived. It's coming from a real place, and then, ideally, you can also, you want to entertain people too. So I think that's important to remember, that there's certain formulas that have to run tandem with that truth that make the audience want to, see what's going to happen next. There's definitely a formula that doesn't have to diminish the artistic aspect of the piece, that can work with it. It's just real. That's the trick, man. Which is, I remember Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas had an argument about this. There was an interview with them, and Kirk Douglas said, "It's not our responsibility to consider the social significance of what we communicate in these films. We're just there to entertain." And Burt Lancaster said, "No, I disagree. It is our responsibility as artists and celebrities or performers to communicate a message that speaks to the people, that can change lives." So they were arguing. One was saying, "No, we're just entertainers. We're not here. We're not messiahs. We're not prophets." And Burt Lancaster's take on it was very different. He saw a responsibility not just to entertain, but to be true in the world.
Right. Very interesting. I have two closer questions for you. I know we've been talking about movies and everything. I'm curious to know, what are just some of your favorite films, just in general, and then if you had any other upcoming projects to promote.
Okay. 3 films come to mind. It could simply be coming of age, but they were also, in my opinion, they were great films. American Graffiti.
Great movie.
The Exorcist.
Mm-hmm.
William Friedkin, big William Friedkin fan. And The Poseidon Adventure, with starring Gene Hackman, Ernest.
Right.
Star-studded cast, won many awards. When I think Academy Awards meant something,
Right.
Sorry, Academy, but
No, you're right.
Circus now, man.
I know.
But so The Poseidon Adventure to me was one of these rare situations where you combine the action element. Irwin Allen was able to combine the action with this religious or seemingly spiritual allegory of the ship going upside down, and this priest, Gene Hackman, having to lead the small group of people through the bowels of the ship to get to the top, which was actually the bottom.
Right.
And everybody who was on top commanding the ship was underneath now. And to me, I see the movie as a spiritual allegory for mankind, like this huge event, a comet or a tsunami, a tidal wave hits humanity and it flips it upside down. And you have the messianic prophet who's telling the people, look, if we stay here, we're going to die. We're going to sink deeper and deeper into the ocean. If you want to get out, survive, you have to fight your way up and out. And the argument was that, no, we have to sit here and wait till help arrives. This man knows nothing of the workings of the ship, and argued. And Gene Hackman called him a pompous ass and said, you guys are the water's going to keep filling up into the ship, and you're going to sink deeper and deeper, which to me is like mankind falling into Dante's Inferno.
Exactly.
When there's an opportunity to fight your way up out of, like Milton said, long is the way and out of hell leads up to light. So we got to fight our way to get out. And so I thought the movie was profound in its ability to communicate the literature in a way that wasn't preachy. But if you look real closely and have any kind of background in theology, you understand that the writers were definitely cleverly suggesting this moral dynamic and spiritual dynamic. And then American Graffiti, the music alone was enough to hook me. The cars were like, each car, John Milner and his Deuce Coupe, the yellow Deuce Coupe.
Right.
Harrison Ford and the 55 Chevy, it's seeming a time of innocence, in America, right, when before that tsunami hit, and Los Angeles became a kind of bizarre place in the 70s after the 60s, revolution. But right prior to that, because the movie's, I think, tagline is "Where were you in '62?" So it speaks to a time of innocence, maybe that never even existed. Who knows? Where America seemed to have a vitality in the way that it communicated itself, you know, visually. And Lucas did a brilliant job with the sound design and the color scheme and this make-believe world that almost seemed real. And you wanted to go to that place and ride up and down the strip in those cars and hang out with the guys and talk to the girls and listen to this classic doo-wop music, man, that's
Right.
perennial. And then The Exorcist, I mean, like, I don't know, man. William Friedkin's ability to conjure the devil in a way so realistically, because the movie functions more like a drama, I think, than
Right.
it does a movie that's classified as horror. And Ellen Burstyn's performance, Linda Blair, Max von Sydow, the young priest, all the actors in this film were brilliant, and the way it was put together. And even I think Ellen Burstyn was interviewed about that film and said that some bizarre things happened when they were making that film, that there were these tragic deaths throughout the production. And she wondered if they were conjuring something,
Right.
that might have been a little bit dangerous in terms of the occult. And so I was always fascinated by her story and how the movie impacted my life and so many people who had never seen anything like that in the 70s. And, if you look on YouTube, you can see videos of people actually being escorted out of the theater because they were vomiting, having panic attacks, anxiety attacks, because, I think America, 1970s America, and its social conscience and its innocence was a little bit more on its sleeve more. It wasn't, I don't think we were so desensitized yet. And
Right.
to witness something as bizarre as The Exorcist is so extreme, this idea of innocence being raped and captured by evil was so well orchestrated. And even with the limitations of the physics of makeup and science, they still did incredible practical effects, man. To this day, when I look at them and I consider the performances married to the effect, it's still unsettling to watch, I think. If you look at it mechanically and you don't consider the spiritual element that's moving through the movie, then you'll discount it as a substandard, schlocky special effects. But I don't look at it that way. And so that movie changed my life in that regard. And yeah, so those three films, definitely.
Awesome. Awesome. And if you had any other upcoming projects to promote.
I'm going to be selfish. Uh, I have my own project that I wrote, directed, and play the lead in called American Trash. It's a social commentary about where we are as a culture, specifically in the geography of Los Angeles, the apathy that seems to be the ruination of our society, the pollution that is destroying the natural habitat, and the issue of PTSD that men deal with when they come back from the war. I created several through lines in my story titled American Trash, which is an attempt to bring the 1960s spirit into the 21st century and introduce the possibility that even with all this conflict going on, that people can still come together in a community of love and care for somebody who's struggling with loss or mental illness, and love one another, help each other through a very challenging time.
I think that's very powerful. That's an awesome thing
You know,
to do.
so that's, I'm in post production now, and my editor Anthony Espina is very talented. He's scoring the film, editing it. I've got a colorist. So long story short, we're in post production. Hopefully, at some point next year, it'll find its home in a proper distribution platform, and I can share my opus with people who maybe might find the story engaging and entertaining. Because I needed to, it had to come out,
Definitely.
I needed to,
Definitely.
like you were talking earlier about your collaboration. it bubbles up on you after a while, and you're just like, I've got to. And after a while, you don't even have to write. How did you write this? I didn't write it. It's been living with. It's been in me for years. I just needed to
Right.
finally muster up the conviction to write, to sit down and focus, and it just wrote itself. I was
Exactly.
sitting in my car one day looking out at the PCH, looking out at the Pacific Ocean, and enjoying this incredible view. And I watched this family get in their very expensive SUV, and they were throwing trash on the ground after they'd wiped their feet off. And I remember thinking, what would happen if some flower childs, from the 1960s showed up and said, "Hey, excuse me, guys, would you mind picking up your trash before you
Right.
leave?" What would happen? How would the father, the mother, how would those kids respond to this woman's affection for Mother Earth and her being appalled in a polite way that they were so desensitized that they were basically divorcing themselves from the very thing that they are, that they came from Earth. Earth, we're all from Earth, right? We've been born into families, but
Exactly.
we
Yeah.
are come out of the earth the way a flower comes out of, a plant comes out of the ground. We also have been sprouted from the earth, right? So this idea that we can divorce ourselves, just ask the American Indians, that we as so-called, modern man can divorce himself by superimposing a technological matrix over the real world is a fallacy, and it's destroying us, man. And so I wanted to create an archetype in a female that would communicate the glory or the love of the planet itself and remind people in a very polite, loving, considerate way, hey man, wake up. Like, we have to swim in that water. Let's stop polluting our well springs. Let's stop cutting our trees down. Let's stop destroying the very home that we live in. Why are we doing this? So I raised the question, in a sort of controversial way. I won't tell you what that is right now, but I needed, there has to be an element. I won't call it a gimmick. I would say there has to be a controversial element to move it
Right.
along. These days, you have to know your audience, right? As my
Right.
acting
Right.
teacher used to say to me, and my manager used to say to me. So there are certain things I had to conjure to drive the point home. And even if they don't understand the point, they're looking at the person that's communicating the point because of what they think that person represents. An infamy.
Right.
And I'm no strangers to infamy because I'm what? The bad guy, right? According to certain observations, I am the outlaw, right? I'm the monster. I'm the devil. I'm, the guy that comes to do a killing, so, or be killed, or, usually situations of violence, right? And it's cool, man. Like, I'm not tripping on it. I think it's fun. It's not, it is what it is. So I think if I'm going to utilize the very exploits that have been used to put me in front of the people, why not take that formula and utilize it in my own way, and marry it to something that they have never conceived of writing for me. I'll write it myself.
I think that's awesome, and I agree with all the points that you brought up that are in the film. I'm very excited to check it out as soon as it's
Thanks, Sam.
released.
I
And
appreciate it.
absolutely. I mean, again, I'm a huge fan. We only touched the tip of the iceberg, with everything that I want to talk to you about. So,
Yeah, forgive me if I didn't allow you enough time to
no,
ask
no,
you.
no, no. This has been exactly what I was hoping for. In fact, better than what I was hoping for.
Glad
So
to do that work.
it just leaves more room for round two, three, four, five. You know,
Glad to hear that. Cool.
absolutely. And
Thank
I just want to let you know I did send you a friend request a
Oh,
while
okay.
back on Facebook.
Okay.
So I know you're pretty busy on there.
Not that busy, man. It's Sunday. It's just pushing a button. That's all it is. It's not that hard.
Okay,
So I
okay,
just
okay.
thank you for letting me know. So I'll look and then I'll press the button and we're good to go. Okay.
Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome.
All right.
Well, Rob, it has been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you, Sam.
I honestly cannot wait to do round two.
It's the same here, man. I
Awesome.
make you happen. You make me happen. It's
Exactly,
a
exactly.
dance. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome.
All right. Take
Rob,
care.
have a great rest of your weekend. Happy holidays. Have a good Thanksgiving. And I look forward to talking with you soon.
You as well, brother.
Awesome. Thank you so
Bye.
much. What's up, all my fishes in the sea? Thanks again for tuning in and for being a subscriber. Your continued support means a lot. I want to let all my guppies in the sea know you can now purchase custom fishbowl merch by DMing me, Sam Fish, on Instagram at thefishbowl88 or on Facebook at thefishbowl. Get hooked on yours today. We have custom t-shirts, mugs, pens, handbags, hats, beanies, hoodies, everything to make you the coolest looking fish in the sea. And if that's not enough, I am now accepting early access subscribers on my Buzzsprout website. That's right, you can subscribe for early access to the Fishbowl's content, as well as I am accepting donations to help keep the show going. Again, your support means the most. It's the most important fishes in the sea to keep the unit going. Thanks again, y'all, and keep tuning in, and let's all keep swimming upstream.